All right, guys. Now we're going to look at quadrant angles. So we have 4 quadrants. We have quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you remember, this is 0 and 360 over here. Oops. Okay. This is going to be 90 degrees, 180, and 270. Okay, so what we're referring to when we talk about quadrant angles are these measurements right here: 0, 360, 90, 180, and 270. What would the sine, cosine, and tangent of those be? So if you're looking at this, this is in relationship to like a graph. This is going to be your y-axis, and this is your x-axis, where x is negative over here, x is positive, then y would be negative down here, and then y would be positive up here. Okay, so we're looking at it as a graph. So this is going to be your x-axis, this is your y-axis, and this is like one full unit. With the unit circle, it's one full unit around. Okay. All right, so let's take a look a little bit further here. Okay, so here it is again. We have our 0, 360, 90, 180, and 270. We want to find out what is your sine and cosine going to be of 0 degrees, 90, 180, and 270. So if 0 degrees lies directly on this line right here, okay, and I write it as a coordinate pair, meaning it's going to have an x and a y value, okay. On this line, if everything is one unit around, means this is a full 1 for x. So x would be 1. Well, what is y? What's the value of y on this line? And that's going to be 0. Okay. And how we can remember what those actually mean and what those go with is an acronym I like to call customer service, or CS. C stands for cosine and S stands for sine. So if you draw your coordinate pairs going all around, okay, so this one would be for both 0 and 360, 90 degrees, 180, 270, okay. I'm going to, above it, write cosine and sine, or customer service. So at 0 degrees, if I want to find out what is the cosine of 0 degrees, I'm going to look up here, and that's going to be 1. Okay, customer service. If I want to find the sine of 360, that's going to be 0, because it's where the sine is 0. Okay, up here, so 90 is at the top of your y-axis. Okay, so y value is going to have a 1 here. But what is x right here? And that's going to be 0. So on this axis, x is always 0, and y is going to be 1. So customer service, so cosine, sine. Okay, so at 90 degrees, my cosine is going to be 0, and my sine is going to be 1. Okay, over here, remember that x is negative over here, so I'm going to put a negative in front of where my x value would be. Okay, I'm on the x-axis, so what is my y value if I'm directly on the x-axis? And my y value is going to be 0. And now remember, everything's 1 away, so here's going to be my 1, and that is -1. Customer service. So my cosine of 180 degrees is going to be -1, but my sine of 180 degrees is going to be 0. Okay. Now we're looking at 270. Okay, so remember, any x value on the x on this line, this is your y-axis, is always going to be 0. Okay, so and below the x-axis, my y value is always negative. So in the y value place, I'm going to put a negative, and I'm going to put a 1. Okay, because x has to be 0, so that means my y value is going to be 1. And what this is telling me, remember your acronym, customer service, or CS. Okay, so customer service stands for cosine for C, sine for S. So cosine of 270 is going to be 0. And then sine of 270 degrees is going to be negative 1. Okay, so if I were to get something that says, well, what is the sine of I were to get something that says, okay, what I have a sine of x equals negative 1. All right, well, I'm going to go back to my unit circle, and I'm going to look for a negative 1, and that's directly under an S. So here, under S is 0. Well, that's not negative 1. S is positive 1. We're getting closer, but we need it to be negative. Okay, so down here, if you look down here, S is negative 1 right here. And that's the only area that my sine is negative 1. So my sine has to be 270 degrees to equal negative 1. Okay. If I'm looking for a cosine of x equals 0, okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at my coordinate pairs, and I'm going to look for all the quadrant angles that have a C with a 0. So here, C and a 0, so it's going to be 90 degrees. Okay, and here I have a C with a 0, so it's going to be 270. Okay, and that is an example of quadrant angles. Go ahead and do a couple practice ones on your own. If you're going to do a practice one, let's do sine of x equals 0, sine of x equals positive 1, cosine of x equals negative 1, and cosine of x equals positive 1. So go ahead, find the angles that directly correspond with that using your chart right here. Copy this down. This is going to be a good notes for you. So go ahead and do that. Pause it, and then go ahead and restart the video for the answers. So if I'm looking for sine of x equals 0, okay, I'm looking where all my s's have a 0 directly under them. So at 0 degrees, okay, and we're going to use 0 instead of 360. And here sine is 0 here, so that's at 180 degrees. Okay, if I'm looking for a sine of x equals 1, then I'm looking on my sheet, where sine is above a 1. Sine is above a 1 here, so that's at 90 degrees. And not here, and this is negative 1 here. So 90 degrees would be my only one. Okay. cosine of x equals -1. Well, I'm going to look for my c's, okay, and see if there's a -1 below. Nope. C, oops, C, nope. Here, C is -1, so cosine is -1 here, and that's going to be at 180 degrees. Okay, and now cosine of x equals 1, so I'm looking for cosine of 1. Okay, so that is going to be at 0 degrees. And those would be your answers. Go ahead and try the quiz.